Hello and welcome to the development show number 13 of the year, which is quite nice. I keep saying this; it's ticking along nicely, which is fantastic. It's one of my goals this year to see if we can reach at least 50 in the year. So we're going quite well. Yes, well, we have Dawna Campbell with us today, who I'm sure she can introduce herself better than I can. And I'm really looking forward to this. And I think we're going to go quite deep onto things today. So, Dawna, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a best-selling author, and I have the book called Financially Fit: Living the Secrets to an Abundant and Prosperous Life. And from there, I've created the Financially Fit program and the Financially Fit movement, which is really all about the subconscious creation of money, which we'll dive into and talk about how some of that works. But I'm also a professional speaker. I've been speaking on live stages internationally. I was just in London a couple of weeks ago, and then sharing these tips and these secrets with everybody so you can truly live a life that you love and love the life that you live. And then I have an international healing practice on top of it. So I still have and maintain a private practice with everything. So I've spoken on many different stages with people such as Mark Victor Hansen, Sharon Lechter, Bill Walsh, and I've been featured in a lot of different magazines. I write monthly as a contributor for Best Holistic Life magazine for heart-centered business owners and entrepreneurs about the subconscious creation of money, and have been featured in news such as Fox News, NBC, CBS, Yahoo Finance, and a lot of different places like that as well. So,
Awesome.
in a nutshell,
In a
there's
nutshell, yeah, I know. I know you feel it's like people say they talk about elevator pitches and things, but when you
Mhm.
get into business and you kind of it sounds like yours is very much like mine, where there's lots of strings to it, but it all kind of ties back into the main goal. So when someone
Yes.
talks about an elevator pitch, you go, "Oh wow, where do I start?"
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
and then you get the advice, "Well, you need to get it nailed down." You go, "But there's
Right.
so much."
Right. So my elevator pitch is really simple. I empower heart-centered business owners and entrepreneurs to step into their power to gain infinite prosperity by increasing their bottom line by 20% through the shift in the subconscious.
Awesome. So what is your definition of heart centered?
It's coming from that place of a feeling inside. And for me, being heart centered, it's not only about giving of service, but to be of service, but it's really having a passion and a desire or an inspiration to really, in my words, help the world become a better place. Because if you can help one person and they increase in vibration and they go out, the whole ripple effect, 10 people, it will cross throughout all time and dimensions and spaces and universes and countries and people and cultures. And it's really about having that coming from that place of goodness that you want something better than what is. And so to me, that's what being heart centered is all about, living in virtue.
So do you okay, so where does this come from? I'm trying to think how to phrase this.
Mhm.
Is it someone who is heart centered to start with and then build a business from there, or do you believe that you can build that into a business?
Both, both. I've had people come to me and they're like, I'm not too sure if I'm heart centered, but here's what I want to do. But they're still doing it from a place of goodness, from like sage
Mhm.
qualities. They want to do better or be better or become better. And those are heart centered qualities to me. We don't want to stay around in some of those lower energies which totally sabotage our lives, like anger and depression and denial and addiction and anxiety and stress. All of those things don't really come from a place of heart-centeredness. You might feel them in the heart space, but you know you want to shift and change it because you know there's something better. So to truly be heart-centered, it's really this transformational journey about peace and balance and kindness and gratitude and harmony and joy and happiness. and coming and approaching life from that viewpoint, because we know that when we're in those energies, the way it works with our energy body and the subconscious, you can go a million miles faster. You start creating instantaneous results. They come back to you. There's different laws like law of attraction, law of magnetism. All of these things come into play because those lower qualities don't go very far, and you don't necessarily get to create in the same way because it sticks to your energy field. And when I talk about heart centeredness, if you think about it in terms of business, if you were to walk into a store and all of the employees were disgruntled, upset, angry, and then treated you rudely, would you go back? Probably not. Most people don't. But if they appreciated that you came in, they took interest, they were happy, they were joyful, they were of service, would you go back and bring 10 more of your people with you? Absolutely. So it really comes from this natural place of beingness for me. So whether or not you see yourself already heart centered, or you're on your way, or you're wanting to transform, knowing that there's these other sabotaging things that need to change, then you're still heart centered. You want something better. You want to share it with the world. You just don't know how to get from A to B. So we'll take you on that transformational journey to really have you working out of your heart space.
Yeah, I agree with it. It's something that I've kind of identified with a lot of people that I do work with, entrepreneurs and things, is the passion that
Mm.
they have. And when you talk about motivation as well, motivation seems to come from a different place sometimes. That it is the lower energy vibes that you're talking about.
Mhm.
You know, I want to start my business because I don't want the stress,
Right.
because I'm leaving a toxic environment. I want to prove people wrong. I want to, and yes, these are great kind of motivational, and they do change the shifts. But unless you have that passion and that drive and that enjoyment as well, you know, if you want to move away from stress, don't start a business. That's all I can say. It's not. It's a
Right.
different kind of stress, but
It is.
um, but then we need a certain level of stress to be productive anyway.
Mhm. Right.
Um, which is really interesting. But yeah, no, it's a lot of people I've spoken to recently have talked what I would describe as heart centered
Mhm.
reasons for starting businesses, even if that isn't to change the world,
Mhm.
but it's to change their immediate world.
Right.
And kind of, yeah, when I talk to people, they're talking about employing. A lot more people I talk to now talk about employing locally, or
Mhm.
having more local suppliers than ever before. I don't know
Right.
whether the pandemic has created that shift with supply chain problems. Have you noticed
Mhm.
any shift towards kind of the heart-centered businesses during the last 2 years, really?
Yes, because a lot of people are stepping up. And even if they're just using that terminology, then the intention is there, because we went into this huge fear-based society, and then there was lots of anger, and now it's come full circle and people are like, no, we can do this better. We want to be heart-centered. We want this instead. So it all shifts and changes. So yes, I live in Montana, so it's a very local community anyway. So everyone is always self-employed. We have businesses, we buy local, we shop local. It's always been the mentality here, but I'm seeing it pop up in other places where I have traveled and places where I've been speaking. What I find really interesting about momentum is that momentum can be used a lot of different ways. And with momentum, we also have motivation to do something to create that momentum. And when we look at the motivation, you can be motivated as a business owner or an entrepreneur or someone who wants to start your own business for a lot of different reasons. Some of the reasons was, I'm going to start my own business to eliminate stress, but it creates a different type of stress. But we're motivated by creating money. If we have lack money
Mhm.
or an energy in the employee world that we don't want, we will go out and do something different, and we're motivated out of those energies. But we're also motivated out of kindness. We're also motivated about giving and to be of service. And some of the top business entrepreneurs and business owners say that their motivation comes from where they can give, what their passion is, what their inspiration is. And for me, I'm motivated by, yes, making the world a better place, but it can be really simple. It's that whole butterfly effect. It doesn't have to be a global scale. It could be you're in the grocery store line, you check out, and you smile at the clerk because you know they're having a really rough day and they're happy, or they feel happy because you were kind to them. So they're going to be nice to the next five people in line.
Mhm.
And then those five people in line will feel it, and it just goes out and creates exponentially going. So it's that whole butterfly effect. So it will reach out and go around globally, or at least locally throughout your whole city somewhere, somehow, by that. And all you did was smile and you were nice to the person out of kindness because you were in your heart space and not your head space.
Yeah,
And
and
the
it
same.
doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't take much to. I'm quite an introverted person.
Mhm,
I would always describe myself as an ambivert, but kind of on
mhm,
the introverted side of it. But yeah, it doesn't take much to just to kind of have a quick,
right.
even a quick conversation while you're packing your
Mhm,
groceries, or like you say, a smile, or hold the
mhm,
door for someone, or be considerate for someone, and it doesn't take much. And it certainly doesn't take much time or effort to do these
right.
things if they're a habit that you've built to start with.
Mhm,
And I suppose that this kind of slips into the kind of the subconscious aspect as well of is it the type of person that we are,
mhm, right.
and do we do it without thinking? And we can always create those habits so that it becomes
Absolutely.
an unthinking habit. I
Mhm.
was going to say, and it becomes a habit, but it's kind of self-explanatory there. But um,
And that same grocery store example, if you were in your heart space, you would smile, you would offer a happy energy, and it would shift and change. But if you were in your head space and
mhm,
that grocery store clerk was upset, you might think things like, why are they mad? Are they angry at me? Do I look funny? Did I do something? Did I offend them? That's not being in your heart space. That's in your
mhm,
head space because you're trying to figure it out. But if you just want to shift and change or offer a different energy and you watch and see them change, that's really about being in the heart space.
one of the hardest lessons I had to learn um, was I've worked in some toxic environments in the past, um, before starting my own business, and one of the hard lessons that I learned being in a kind of management role was going into work each day, saying good morning to people and being ignored.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it kind of took me a while to go, well, I'm not going to bother talking to you because you just ignored me for the past week. So why am I going to make the effort? And I was talking to someone about this, and they said, but why aren't you making the effort?
Yeah.
And I said, because they don't make the effort. And they said, well, what is the reason for you not making an effort?
Mhm.
And and basically that question just kept on being pushed back at me every time I said, well, it's this or it's that, or it was, well, why aren't you making the effort? And it took me quite a while to realize that it may not be me, it may not be personal. They might just not want to be at work, so they actually don't speak to anyone. It's not just me
Right.
personally.
And that's one of the secrets that I've learned in my practice over the last 12, 15 years is what a person says and does is about them, not about you,
Hmm.
because it's coming from the inside of them. So if they ignore you, they're ignoring something about themselves. If they are kind and generous and back, that's coming from the inside of them. A lot of times we talk about other people, we gossip, we do other things, but everything that that person says, even if it's about somebody else, still came through their perception. It still came through their their filter, and it's still about them because it came from the inside of them and nobody forced them to say or do it. So you're absolutely right in that. It was all about them. It may not had anything to do with you. You were still being kind. Hi, how are you? Good morning. Because that's who you are on the inside.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It took me a while to realize that, we can change for people,
Mhm,
and we always look at changing positively for people. So, but we don't often talk about the way that we can negatively change because of other people's behaviors.
mhm.
And I think that that's quite an important topic to realize, that when we do change, and I'm not talking about, huge shifts where you're trying to change to please somebody.
Mhm,
But if we take that example, so if someone says good morning to you and you're not a morning person,
mhm.
and someone repeatedly says good morning every morning, eventually you will change that positive and start responding. It may be a grunt to start with. It may just be, a physical acknowledgement, but eventually you positively change over time. But we don't often talk about the negative changes that can occur. So
Right.
it's kind of the reverse of it.
Mhm. And that
Um,
does and can happen because we are electromagnetic beings. If you look at physics, if you look at science, we are. And so energy runs up and down our body, but we also have energy centers. So our energy centers send out and magnetically attract back exactly where we're at, which creates an energy field around this. You can look up in science books, it's all there. And what happens is when you are in another space with another person, those energy fields will come together and there'll be a slight overlap. Well, it's in that overlap is where the common shared energies are. So, yes, if you're constantly around somebody that is critical or complaining or negative, and you're a very positive person, eventually over time, one person either needs to start becoming more positive or the other person starts sinking down and lowering their vibration to match in a negative way. So, we attract ourselves to people that have the same qualities as we do, whether they're positive or negative or some blend in between. But the reverse also happens because
mhm,
if there's too much of that negative in an environment, which happened to me years ago in a work environment, you eventually start lowering yourself and then you start matching their energy, their behavior, and what they're sending out as signals to be accepted, included, and part of the group. So it does happen. Yes.
yeah, because we talk about the law of attraction, and it's something that I've really got into the last, I don't know, like the last 12 months, maybe a little bit longer.
Mhm.
And it is such a positive thing.
Yes.
And when you look into it, and I may be wrong in my perception of it, and things, but yeah, you attract what you put out there. And again, people always look at the positive side of it. But
Right.
the negative side is, if you are putting negativity out, you will attract negativity.
Absolutely.
And then people believe that it doesn't happen because they believe it's a life-changing law.
But you always attract the energy that you are in. So here's how it works. Your subconscious records everything from the day that you're born to the day you exit this earth. And what it's doing is it's constantly assigning feelings and emotions moment by moment to all of those events that give you an operating system, a way to interact, a way to communicate, a way to respond, whether verbally or non verbally. So oftentimes we will think a thought, the law of attraction, your thoughts create your reality. I want to be rich and abundant. Not a bad thought. We all want that. But yet we feel on the inside a less than, or I'm not worthy, or I don't deserve to be rich and abundant. So there's a disconnect between what we feel and what we think. In this feeling energy, this is the law of magnetism. And it also corresponds to the subconscious because this is the energy going out of our energy field to mentally and physically, spiritually, emotionally bring back the feelings that we are in. The problem with this is that our awareness level is only about 10% of the time this is happening. And that's if you're Albert Einstein. So 90% of the time, we just don't know or we're not aware of what feeling energy we are sending out to attract. And the universe is all or nothing. So we can think I'm rich and abundant, and that'll come back to you about 10% of the time. But if you don't feel the rich and abundant and what that really is, and that you are worthy and deserving and enough on the inside, you're going to attract back all the negative things because you're going to attract back the lack. Because that's exactly how the law is designed. It's all based on cause and effect. And if you were the cause sending out an energy signal, like a radio transmitter and receiver, it's going to come back to you the same signal you sent out, regardless of what that signal is. And the universe, like I said, is all or nothing. So whether it's relationships, health, money, whatever category you think of, it's going to send it back to you, and it's going to affect all areas of your life. We're the only ones that compartmentalize and segregate, saying, oh, I feel this about money and this about relationships. You send out a lack energy, it doesn't matter what category or how you're thinking about it, the universe is just going to send you back lack. If you're sending out happy, joyful energy, 90% of the time, you're going to have happy, joyful experiences come back. It's how the law works.
And I'm guessing this is kind of where we go with the subconscious creation of money as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Is it literally just vibes, or does it go a lot deeper than that?
This is the premise of how it all starts. But what happens is there's that disconnect between what we think and with what we feel. But what we don't recognize and realize is what we feel may have been taught to us when we were really little, maybe 2 or 3 or 5, and we're not aware of what got stuck there. So here we are later in life trying to move forward, create our businesses, have a steady income flow of money, and it doesn't matter what we do, nothing seems to work. Well, it might relate back to something in childhood, one of those literal events that had emotions and feelings that got stuck to it in that negative way that we need to shift and change in a pattern. So let me give you an example of this. I was speaking in Farmington, Connecticut a couple of years ago, and I pulled a gentleman up from the audience and I asked him what he wanted to change. And he goes, I want to have more money. And I said, okay, why? It always goes back to a lifestyle or relationship. And he said, well, I have 2 boys. They're in their second, third year of high school. And in a few years, they're going to go off to college. There's some things we want to do as a family. I want to create the more and the extra to do it. And I haven't been able to do it. But we want to do it before they go to college. Because after that, they get married, they start living their own lives. We may not get to do it. Because I'm not greedy. I just want to have some of these experiences. So I asked him how he felt about not moving forward to create the extra income. And he goes, I am so frustrated. So I knew frustration was the beginning of what the block was. There was many layers down below. And what came out was his parents had gotten divorced when he was 9. Together as a family, they had plenty of money. They had lots of extra to go do things. But as separate families, they were always comfortable where they were, but they never had the extra because it was 2 households instead of 1. And he was in the middle as an only child, and they played tug-of-war with him. So he got incredibly frustrated. We uncovered what it was that he needed at that time, and he wanted to feel pride, a sense of honor and respect. He wanted to receive that from his sons. So we shifted those mindset patterns in the subconscious at the time of the event. And then I asked him what it was, how he resaw that event. And he said, this is really weird. He goes, my parents still got divorced, but I'm not frustrated. He goes, I'm like happy and I'm riding my bicycle down the street and I'm playing with my friends. Because in every moment, every frequency exists. He just got stuck on frustration. So what happened? He just did exactly what he was doing in business. His bottom line increased 20 to 25%. He had the extra money for his family to go do what he wanted to do. And he didn't change one thing, except we aligned how he felt back to an event when he was in his childhood of what was stopping him with what he was thinking. and it happened instantaneously. So that's what I mean by the subconscious creation of money. It's putting the heart space, that 90% with what we feel, with what we think up here on those deeper levels and layers. And then you start receiving the results that you're asking for because it's 100% in alignment, not 10% in alignment.
Yeah, no, that story is quite I think it's quite a common one. I know that in the past when I've spoken to people about businesses and money and things, and you're right, you kind of, I always try and ask people to say, the question is, well, how much money do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And people go, enough to live comfortably.
Right.
Well, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's either, well, my parents lived within their means, or my parents struggled, or
Mm-hmm.
and people go, I want to live comfortably. I want a nice house, a nice car, nice holidays, nice vacations. But they don't think beyond that because that was what they saw growing up.
Exactly.
And we don't, yeah, you're right. You don't realize we have that in our subconscious mind to not be. I even had someone say to me that they felt guilty
Mm-hmm.
because they'd got a nicer house than their parents had.
Yes. And they probably felt the guilt from the parents that the parents didn't provide a nicer house, X, Y, or the parents, or they felt the jealousy and the envy from the parents, which caused the guilt. There's a lot of different dynamics there because to be a part of the family, we have to be just like the family. You can't be your authentic self. You can't be more than because you have to be loyal to the family. So there's a lot of different energies and beliefs that get all entangled in that.
So I'm guessing this also goes into things like education as well, and even vacation destinations.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. All of it does. I grew up near poverty in Silicon Valley, but I know a lot of people have different versions of what poverty is. So for me, that was welfare, food stamps, and the next door neighbors dumpster diving behind grocery stores to bring over the day old food for my family to eat. So I
Mhm.
got a job. I worked at age 14, became a financial advisor. I thought there was a different way. That's a whole different story. But what was happening for me during that time was I was really learning and understanding some of these different principles. And I remember I worked all my way through college and got a college degree. And I was the first person in my family to actually go through college. And then I remember the day that I bought a car. Now it was a Mercedes Benz. It was used. It was a 1982. It was a four-door sedan. It cost me $4,000 in the day. And I had the money and I wanted a Mercedes because I knew that they were really nice, reliable cars. And I was driving 40 miles each way to and from some of my college classes. And that's what I got. But yet, I grew up in that era of poverty. The Mercedes Benz triggered things within my parents. There was jealousy and envy, even though their car, whatever car they had, was 42 times more expensive than my car. It was all based on the perception of
Mhm.
it without really looking at, I bought a used car with 200,000 miles on it for $4,000. It's because of the label that it had with it. But a lot of that is perception. A lot of that is how we grew up to have enough to barely get by, and my vacations growing up, we would go up to the redwood forest and go camping in a trailer, but those were some of the best memories versus the five-star luxury type of vacation, which is not what I'm attracted to. So everything in your childhood shapes you, who you are today, and teaches you all about money in ways that you can't imagine until we start breaking it down to understand where it really came from, what was passed down in your DNA from your ancestors, how they were raised, because that was your originating blueprint operating system, and then what we can really do to shift and change it in these different frequencies to make everything easier. But it's not about having enough. And I used to hear the word that I have plenty.
Mhm.
And yes, there is always plenty of money, plenty of abundance, plenty of prosperity. But now I think about the word extra. I don't
Mm.
want enough and I don't want plenty. I want extra because if I have extra, I can do good things with it and share it with other people and give back to foundations or different places that I believe in because I have extra. I have
Mm.
more than enough. I have more than plenty. I have extra to share. And that's one of my goals.
Yeah, it is. I think, kind of going back to the heart centered, that when we do have extra, and I removed a ceiling limit of
Hmm.
and it was something that I've spoken about before on some other shows and things, and it was a life changing money moment for me,
Hmm.
and it kind of just did shift shift my thoughts about money. And it was Tony Robbins, and he was talking on stage, and he got people to write down an amount of money that would change their lives that they wanted.
Hmm.
And then he went around the room, and eventually, someone was saying like $100,000 or $250,000, and he eventually found someone with written down $1 million, and people were laughing at them. And he said, well, why, if you put 1 million? Well, it means I can do this and I can do that and I can look after my parents. And he said, no, that's not. I'm not asking what are you going to do with 1 million. Why have you only written down 1 million?
Right.
Why have you not written down 5 million?
Or 20 million or
Yeah,
100.
and so he said, "Oh, okay, I'll change it." And he says, "Okay, so why 5 million? Why not 10 million?" And then he kind of went on to say, has anyone not actually put a number down? And for me, I was just like, yeah, we kind of, excuse me, we kind of set these goals and these targets, but
Yes.
when we're talking about, but every goal and target that we set, and I'm talking about like certainly financially, it puts a limit on us.
Hmm.
And I know that when I started my business, I broke free from that
Yes.
because it doesn't matter who you are, how much money you earn. If you're working for somebody else, there is that ceiling limit there. You might be taking home $1 million a year,
Hmm.
but you'll never reach above that.
Right.
And I know a lot of people say, well, $1 million, I'll be happy with $1 million a year. But what I'm saying from a, kind of a brain point of view, that you still have that limiting ceiling.
Hmm.
And how much of that limiting ceiling do you take into other things?
Right. And we limit ourselves in ways that we don't realize that we're limiting ourselves. And by asking a question like, how much money, that already implies that there is a limit. And
Hmm.
really, in the end, it's never about the money. It never
No,
is. It's never about
money, money is. I like what you said about having extra and what you could do with that extra. And
the
it is a tool, and it's a tool that a lot of people say that money's a necessary evil, and I don't think that it's necessarily evil. It's the way that you accumulate it and the way that you spend it
money.
determines whether it's good or evil.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely there. It's all based on perception.
Yeah. So when we think about money, that we can, and I think we've touched on it a little bit already, about the kind of the emotions that we can attach to
Hmm.
lack of money. I suppose our lack of money is different emotional set
Hmm.
to abundance of money.
Yes, it is. It is. Share with you a story. I remember a time when I was little, I might have been about 8 or 9, and we had gone down to the local store. It was like a drugstore, pharmacy type of store. And I remember that it was right at the time Slinkies became really hot. Now it's this metal thing
Hmm.
that just kind of arced and would walk and move and do different things, and everybody had one. And I thought, well, this would be great. This would be amazing. It would occupy me for hours and hours and hours, and I really wanted one. And I remember asking my mom if I could have it in the store. And it was like maybe $1. Now, $1 isn't anything today, but back then, $1 was significant, but still. And I remember her response, and she became incredibly angry, yelled and shouted at me in the store and went, "No, you can't have it. Stop." It was like, "Stop asking for things." I don't think I asked for anything else after that ever in my life. It's taken me a really long time to overcome that. But when I went to that memory and I really started looking at it, it wasn't about the money. It was about what it represented. And it was at the time that we didn't really have money and we needed to have it for other things, our necessities and our survival needs. I just didn't have the understanding. But how I felt in that moment was that I was just completely unworthy to even ask for something very simple, very small, that I just wasn't worth it. And it taught me all kinds of things. What should have happened or could have happened was that it could have just been explained to me, or that we just don't have it today. I could have been offered compassion. I could have had an understanding, but it wasn't given to me in that way. So I associated that negativity that came to, "I'm not enough. I'm less than. I'm not worthy of this."
Mhm.
What I needed in the moment was something different. And when I understood that, it changed my entire paradigm in life, because it wasn't about the money. It wasn't what the money was buying. It was how I chose to feel by that interaction. And when I understood the greater communication of what my mom was going through and looked at it from that perspective, it changed my entire viewpoint of everything. Now I can ask for things. And oftentimes, though, still being independent, if I want something and and what I desire, then, I find a way to have it. But it really changed my whole outlook and how I interact with my own children as well. But it wasn't what the money could buy, it was what the money represented and how it was communicated to what got stuck in my brain.
Mm. Yeah, I've got a very similar story, and I was just laughing at Slink, and he just reminded me when I was younger, a friend of mine, where he had them in the States, a soda stream. So
Hmm.
it was a carbonated drinks maker, and a friend had one, and I was desperate, and me and my brother were both desperate, and my parents go, "No, we're not buying that. We're not buying that." And it was kind of frustration. Well, we can have this, but we can have that. We can have all these different flavors. We can make this, and what's funny is when I became an adult, I was like, one of the first things I'm going to buy is a soda stream. I'm gonna and they weren't that good, but
No, none of it was.
it was about not wasting money, not
Yes,
spending money on things you really don't need.
right.
And I think I've still taken that in with me now, that very, very rarely will I spend money on what I would consider to be a treat. But
Mhm,
I found treats in different ways.
mhm. Absolutely.
Um, and they've got to have a practical use to most. I'm not saying everything that I spend money on, but I'm terrible for just going out and getting coffee, and that's kind of where I waste a lot of my money. But yeah, it's still that's still kind of stuck with me now. Is do I need this?
Mhm,
What is it going to add to me? Are there alternatives?
mhm.
And I
Yes.
think I do that without thinking too much.
And for me, also, in addition, because I always take all of those things into consideration, but then I also research, I take time to look, and then when I decide what I want, you know what? That's what I want. Because
Mhm,
I would rather have one thing that I truly want, might be a little bit higher price point, that's going to really help me increase my happiness and joy. It serves a need and all of that, rather than five things that I don't want. And so that's probably one of the biggest lessons, and a phrase I hear myself saying every so often: a girl wants what a girl wants. And if this is what it is, this is what it is, because this is what it does for me. It's not about the
mhm,
monetary value, it's about how I feel about it.
mm,
And so that's really shifted and changed a lot of my own mindset. And I will wait and save and put something together to receive the piece that I want, rather than just going out to have get something just by, which was my
mhm,
parents. I'll have it just to get by until I can afford something different. And I will just go without until I can have what I want. But the point is really we're truly infinite, we're truly abundant, and we're truly prosperous in all areas of our life. So it's about creating that lifestyle, living the life you love, loving the life you live, and having plenty, that extra, so that you can go do all of those things really without thought, but in such a way that you feel good about yourself, that you know that you're worthy. You didn't overspend, you didn't hoard and save every penny either. You have a nice, fluid balance. And that's what financially fit is all about. It's
Mm.
creating that internal balance to have that external balance.
And of course, one of the things we can benefit from is just joy, is just
Yes.
happiness.
Absolutely.
You know, and I
Absolutely.
know I talk about practical things, but one of those practical things for me is joy, is happiness.
hmm
You know, and it's going out occasionally and getting breakfast out somewhere, because it's a break. It's, you know, it does bring me a lot of happiness, and
hmm
that shouldn't be discounted either.
No, not at all. And you just brought up something that is one of the very first principles I talk about in Financially Fit, and that happiness is an inside job, because we think money and all of these things outside is going to provide happiness on the inside. And in a way, money started replacing our divine essence. But really, happiness is on the inside of you. And if you're making decisions based on your own happiness, however it flows through, whether it's something that might be free, maybe it costs a little bit of money, then that's going to facilitate your own happiness, and happiness breeds happiness.
Mm,
And really, I think that's why we are meant to live part of this life this way, is to generate that happiness, regardless of what our external circumstances may look like. So if going to breakfast occasionally brings you that happiness and joy, then go do it, because there's no right way or wrong way. It's just that, are you happy? And I remember
mhm.
once I had an employer ask me, "Are you happy?" And every time he saw her, "Are you happy? Are you happy?" And so I started qualifying my happiness and trying to quantify it. Well, I'm mostly happy today, and yesterday I wasn't happy. And I'm like 83.7% happy. Well, wait, why can't I be 100% happy? What needs to change for that? So then I started focusing on unhappiness to where I wasn't happy and why, which brought me more unhappiness. So I started keeping a happiness journal and writing down the end of every day my happy moments and what brought me happiness, to really truly what brought me that joy. And I will tell you, after doing this for a period of time, not one thing associated with money.
Mm.
It just wasn't.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because I was laughing, and it's slightly true that, you know, you can say, well, you know, how are you doing today? You know, are you happy? And I think a lot of people say, well, I'll be happy once I finish work today.
Yeah,
And this, it's
absolute
happiness cutoff
banana.
point. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like, I can be happy after 5 o'clock. I
yeah,
can be happy after 6 o'clock. I can't be happy before that,
right.
because I'm having to do this.
You can be
And it
happy
is,
every moment.
yeah, and it's quite funny, and oh yeah, it's kind of going down, but you're right. We do quantify it, and we put ourselves in certainly in times. Well,
hmm
I must do this, so therefore I can't have these moments of joy, these moments of happiness while I'm doing this, because it's not really allowed. You
hmm
know, and you know, especially with things like work environments and things, that if there is a lot of negative energy there, you feel like you can't be that positive, happy person,
hmm
because it clashes with the negative energy. You don't fit in.
Yeah,
And it's yeah, sorry, this is just making me laugh. So I was thinking, yeah, I can be happy at 8 o'clock tonight. After
right.
that, after that, you know, kind
Yeah.
of, or before that.
We're on a timer, or there's an
Yeah,
alarm that says, "All right, you can be
yeah.
happy now."
An internal alarm, yeah. Internal
But a
switch
lot of
that
it,
said,
I think it's just our human nature so much that we want to be included and part of the group, that we're willing to do anything. And if that means take on the negative qualities or the attributes, or staying in your own unhappiness, because that's where the group decides to stay, so
mm,
you can be included, and then you can be happy when you're done working, you're just really doing a disservice to yourself. And I think it just comes from that need of being included.
Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me. I worked for a company, and we had 2 offices, and I was in the one office, and there was a couple of people in there. Then there's another office with, I think it was 4 people in there, and occasionally someone from the other office used to come in to our office and say, "What are you laughing about? We can hear you in the other office." Because the office I was in, we were creating such moments, but it was such a nice vibe. And I actually taught someone how to rant properly. And this is funny because I used to rant, and the other 2 people just used to laugh at me for ranting
Uh-huh.
because it was funny, because I would start on something and it'd go on and on and on. And by the end, I'd kind of lost what I was ranting about to start with.
Went down all those bunny trails.
Yeah, and it was just funny, and then the other people started laughing, and it was just a funny scenario, and it was such a nice office to work in, and such a nice office environment to work in, because even if you've got a problem, people would say, "What can I do to help? How can I help you through this?" And but it was good fun, even if someone was in a bad mood, or it was just kind of like, "Well, I'll sit and listen to you. What do you need to get off your chest?" And then we'll have a laugh about it afterwards. But yeah, other people used to come in and go, "Well, it's so quiet in there, I dare not speak. I've just popped in to see what you're laughing about," because they wanted some happiness, some laughter in their
And they
work
wanted to
day
be
as well.
included.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it is yeah, take the joy and the happiness. I think there's very
It's
few
free.
things. There's very
It's
few
good.
things in our day-to-day life that you can't find the happiness and the enjoyment from, even when things go terribly wrong. We've still got gratitude. We've still got thanks that we can give, and we can actually, be kinder, be more heart-centered with the things going on, because unless someone's extremely evil, extremely mean, most of the times when they say things or do things, that it's not meant towards us. It's just a projection of where they are at the moment.
Exactly. That's
Um,
exactly it, because what a person says comes from the inside of them, and it has nothing to do with you.
yeah. So we can always find a little bit of happiness everywhere we go, I think. And we're going off a little bit off the off the subject. I kind of want to let's bring it back. I'm terrible for going off on tangents.
No, but it was right
I
on.
find it so interesting to talk to. And
Because it's exactly how I start off the book, Financially Fit, Living the Secrets to an Abundant and Prosperous Life. And it's all about having happiness on the inside as the center of your beingness and divine essence, and money on the outside. And that happiness on the inside will influence everything in your outside world, including the money. And money is fluid. And that's what will attract more of that from that subconscious point of view, because money is emotional, and it plays off of where and who you are in the moment and what you're feeling. So that's the exact premise of how it starts. So I know we went down a little bunny trail, but it's right on point. So you intuitively picked it up, because it's exactly one of the very first things I talk about.
so what are the things? So I'm guessing that because we have a lot of kind of blockages and obstacles in our life as well, with many things, that this relates to money and money generation, and money attraction, whatever kind of terminology we want to put on it. So what other kind of blocks are there, other than the obvious ones that spring to mind are what you mentioned earlier, not feeling worthy enough.
Right. Right. One of the biggest blocks, because we have these energy centers in our body, there's 7 main ones, which allow the energy to flow in and out of our body. But in that, each of those energy centers has a lot of different qualities in there. And in the different centers, we have different emotions and feelings. And one of the biggest ones that will lock up and bind up all of those energy centers, kind of like shutting a door and locking it and throwing away the key, it's when we get into the energy of fear, doubt, and disbelief. And those three things will stop instantly all of the good, positive things coming to you, especially if you're in a state of fear. Well, in our environment, the last couple of years, there's been a lot of fear, and then it changed to anger. Now, fear is saying something about the situation is so intense that I can't see the love in the moment. And because of that, I can't see the love, I can't feel it, I can't experience it. It must not be here because it totally locked you out. So, stress, worry, pressure, anxiety, those are all different forms of fear. Now, in the next layer, anger is saying something about the situation needs to change. So as a society, as culture, we went through a year of fear, not knowing what's going on. And then we went through like anger, going, something about this situation needs to change. And now this year, we're experiencing and seeing all of these different changes that are happening, trying to correct or right the wrongs.
Mm-hmm.
And anger, if it stays too dense in the body, it goes into resentment, it goes into sometimes rage or frustration or being upset. But in the body, it will cause inflammation, all kinds of different things along with that. And then the next layer up is sadness. And sadness is just saying there is something, love that I'm holding on the inside that I can't express outwardly. So loneliness and grief and all of those things. We've seen all of these energies over the last several years come out as society. And then the top two emotions, how money plays off of it, happiness and joy. And then the top one is love. And what happens is the fear, the doubt, the disbelief, all of those emotions get bound up and closes us off. We're susceptible to disease, the emotional instability. But the antidote to those is faith, trust, and belief. So when doubt turns to faith, disbelief to belief, and fear turns to trust, those energy centers open and they unlock. And then we can have those sage qualities come in, the peace, the balance, the joy, the love, the harmony, the gratitude, all of those things. And what's interesting is some of the emotions that we get into and some of our behavior patterns like avoidance and blame and criticism and judgment and jealousy and envy all affect our money supply, and we don't even know it with the words. Green with envy, for example. We have judges. If you're judging another person, but yet in the court of law, there's a judge, you can have a judgment or a lien against your house. Those are also money terms. Just like the positive qualities are also money terms as well. We talk about peace, but yet in the money world, you want a piece of the pie. Our balance, we want to be internally balanced as spiritual beings, but we talk about balancing our balance sheets or balancing our checkbook or balancing the scales. So a lot of the words that we use spiritually or who we want to be also cross over to the financial world, including being valued, appreciated, worthy, feeling like you're enough. Those are also flowing into our money terms. And if you're not in the right heart set, the right energy as a being, your external world is going to reflect that.
And there's also the fear of success as well.
Yes, fear of success, fear of failure, fear of bankruptcy, fear of rejection, fear of pick a fear and it will relate every single time.
Yeah, because failure is talked about a lot, and
Yeah. What
and
happens?
I think that failure is, in my personal opinion, I've got my own business. I can say what I like. I think it's talked about far too much. It's glorified. It's
Mhm.
used to sell.
Mhm.
But it's kind of glorified. Even kind of the the kind of the sayings that if you haven't failed, then you haven't tried. But
Mhm.
I think that there's learning in that success. But I'm not sure many people ask themselves the question of what happens if I become successful.
Mhm. Right.
And and we've seen businesses, certainly in the tech space, startup that grow and succeed very, very quickly,
Mhm.
and people then can't handle that immediate success. I was reading this week that there's two tech startups that were two of the highest initially funded startups fail within a week.
Yeah.
Because they became so successful in that week. They just didn't know how to handle that.
Yes.
And for me, I think that the fear of success, if you like, or certainly the question, what will you do when you are successful, needs to be asked a lot more, because again, that can bring in, for me, it can bring in these blocks that you're talking about as well.
Yes.
It's not just on the failure, I've got no money front. It's I've got money and I don't know what to do with it.
Exactly. Exactly true.
Am I worthy of this money? And it is, yeah. And I think it's something that needs to be talked about a little bit more. I don't know your kind of views on it.
Yes, because oftentimes we don't know how to hold the energy of money physically. And here's what I mean by that. Sometimes we want and ask for lots of money to come, but the money doors just doesn't open up because you physically can't hold the energy of money because you're not moving. Say you need to have physical movement. This is one of the lessons I learned this last week, was that the more I physically moved my body by walking, the more money that flowed into my life because I was in a different elevated mood. And I saw the direct correlation that if you are physically fit, physically, emotionally fit in your emotions, mentally fit in your mind, and spiritually fit, financially fit just flows into it. And that was one of the key factors, because if you're not moving, you're lazy, you're sitting around, you're watching TV, you're eating all kinds of junk food, you're not doing the things for you to keep your body tuned up to hold the energy of money. Now, the other side that I saw was you have this huge influx of money coming in, but if you're used to these other qualities, you're in your comfort zone. You don't know how to handle that influx of physical money coming in. And if you haven't been fit in your mind, your heart, your soul, all of those things, you don't know what to do with it. So then you just spend it and spend it lavishly. And I think of people who have won the lottery, and then they spend all the money or do different things with it, and then they're worse off than they were when they won the lottery, even though they knew that they had millions and millions and millions of dollars. And now, because they don't know how to utilize it, have it work for them and use it properly, it all went away because mentally they weren't financially fit in their minds. Spiritually, they weren't financially fit. Emotionally, they weren't financially fit. But if you do all of those things and you learn about it, and then the inflow comes in, you know exactly what it is, what you need to do to maintain, sustain, and keep it growing. So, yes.
We also see that a lot with celebrities as well. The celebrities that are going bankrupt, that you and I probably grew up watching or
Yes.
knowing or listening to, and suddenly, their careers finished a while ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and suddenly they're bankrupt again.
Yes.
And
Because they don't know how to handle the energy of money.
yeah, and you do wonder what's kind of gone on. I guess that they were living a unsustainable lifestyle and not actually realizing that they needed to somehow sustain that lifestyle. Certainly over here, football players or soccer players, they're it's not so bad now, but there was a time where quite a few were going bankrupt, and it was, well, what do they do now? And they're a lot more. I think the clubs have taken a lot more ownership on that, and certainly knowing some young professional players when I was growing up, that they did have more advice, and I think it's got more and more. But ultimately, what you're talking about is right. It's having that, being financially fit and mentally fit to be able to deal with success, with this sudden influx of money.
Right.
I always see money as I love talking about root things and byproducts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think financially they are a lot of the time it's byproducts.
Hmm. Yes.
I think when you chase money, it becomes tiring. You're not always successful. That is your measurement, your marker. I see people saying, if you want to make 10,000 a month, you must do this, you must do that. And
Hmm.
and that 10,000 a month is the marker. And if you only hit one or two or three, you've failed.
Hmm.
Um, so how do we open these kind of, should we use the word doors to allow the kind of, I don't know if you want to use the word manifestation or attraction or of kind of wealth?
Hmm. One is, there's a couple of different ways. One is to first have awareness, and awareness of how you truly feel in the moment. So when you sit down and start paying all of your bills, how do you truly feel while you're paying your bills? Because that's going to give you an indication. So the first thing is to create an awareness. And for me, I just stop and mentally check in with myself throughout the day. How do I feel? Others, I tell them to set a timer randomly on their phone. And when it goes off, stop and assess how you feel in the moment, because that's going to give you a clue to what your subconscious is doing to the energy that you're sending out to what's coming back. You might not even be working on anything with money. You might be we might be recording a podcast, or you might be on a speaking stage, or you might be writing a book, or you might be in your day job, or you might be on the phone talking to someone. But stop and assess how you feel, because that's going to share with you if you are on the right track and the right path, or if there's something in there that you need to change. Now, if you're in that stressful, worry, pressure type of moment stage, stop yourself and just do a breathing exercise. Because when we breathe in all the good things and the oxygen that our body needs. And when we breathe out all the things, the toxins, the carbon dioxide our body doesn't need. And so, say you are having a real stressful moment because you're at work and you recognize that you're in stress. So, what do you rather have? You want to have peace. So, then you breathe in the energy of peace and you breathe out the word stress, and do that for 2 to 3 minutes. And it will change your body physiologically. So, that's something very active that you can do as a tip to change your thought process and some things in the subconscious. Now, how do we use all of this to manifest and create? That's like part two to changing yourself physiologically. And it goes to, are you in a masculine brain or a feminine brain? Are you being or are you doing? And what energies and emotions get associated with that, and how to shift and change it. And it all depends on how you're utilizing your brain in that context.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think awareness is honest awareness and
Mhm.
being completely honest with yourself.
Yes.
I know that some people struggle with that,
Hmm.
but we have to remember that when we're being honest with ourselves, even if we're writing it down, and I'd always suggest to people to write it down, and then it's out,
Hmm.
and you can always go back to it and not have to remember what you thought in the moment. The other thing we need to remember is that we're the only people that are going to see that
Yes.
unless we choose to share it.
Hmm.
But so you can be as honest as you want. No one else is going to see it. Nobody else is going to judge you. Nobody else is going to try and convince you otherwise out of the goodness of their heart. You could say, "Oh, well, I actually feel this about myself."
Hmm.
Someone will go, "Oh, no, no, that's not what I see." And you know the phrase, "Oh,
Right.
if you could only see what I see,"
Right.
and it is the kindness, but it's someone trying to be nice to you and build you up, but it's not always helpful, because sometimes we do need to be brutally honest with ourselves.
Right. And that's what that awareness creates. If you are really truly honest in the moment, you only have to do it to yourself mentally and acknowledge how something truly feels, then you have the power to change it and create it differently
Mhm.
every single time. But if you're not willing to acknowledge and be honest about that, then you are enabled and you are not empowered as a person because you're giving away all of your energy and all of that to other people or places because you're allowing them to take it, or that you're giving it to them. But if you can truly acknowledge how you feel, you become incredibly empowered because it puts you in the driver's seat, in control to do it differently.
I think another big thing that I found when I was doing this was I could be brutally honest with myself and not take it personally, because I know that it's not a personal attack on me by me, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And then what I found is I could then take it into other people. So we could have a conversation and I can be honest with you about our conversation, or if you've crossed a boundary, or, the other side of it is I can be honest to you about the things that I like about you, or the fact we're having a really good conversation, and take the personal aspects out of that conversation, because you've done it so much with yourself.
Yes.
And it's very hard for someone to personally attack themselves.
But yet we do it all the time. We do.
It's great. But do we? I don't know. The kind of the inner
Not
voices are
consciously.
something that are really interesting, because, the negative inner voice that we're told that we should banish, it's actually the cautious questioning voice. And I've reframed mine as that. It's not the voice saying you're not worthy, you're not good enough. It's the voice saying, do you want to think about this a little bit longer? Are you sure this is the best course of action?
Right.
So it's the questioning, reasoning voice in my head, which is quite a powerful one.
It is incredibly powerful. One of the phrases that I think about in listening to how you were sharing and explaining things was a skill set that I learned when I lived in an ashram, which was a spiritual living community, for a little while. And I was doing their teacher training course. And they taught me this with children, because anytime you said the words, you make me, and the famous parent phrase is, you make me so angry. What you're doing is you are handing your power and control over to the child. And what happens on a subconscious point of view is the child goes, oh, I make you angry. What else can I make you do? And how many more buttons can I push? And they'll start doing that, rather than owning how you truly feel on the inside yourself with who you are, and say, right now I feel incredibly angry, rather than saying the other person made you, because you only get to choose how you feel. Nobody else does that for you. And if you have feelings inside, you chose that on some level. So you're always in control. But by saying somebody else did something to do it to you, you're just handing them your power and your control, and you're not empowered anymore. So one of the phrases that I taught my child was when they say things like, Mom, I'm bored. It's like, well, hi, bored. How are you today? And they're like, no, 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 I'm bored. And it's like, well, I get that, but how are you, bored? I'm Dawna. And finally she's like, what do you want me to say? And I'm like, I want you to acknowledge your feeling and say, I am bored. Say, I feel bored, for example, and acknowledge that. Because when you can acknowledge that feeling, you have the power to change it. So when you feel bored, what can you do that's different so that feeling sensation isn't there? And then as a parent, I do the same thing. I own how I feel, and I don't tell the child, you made me XYZ. I choose to feel this, but then that tells me I have the power to change it. Same thing with friends, with coworkers, with employees, employers, all of that. It keeps you in the driver's seat and empowered that way.
Yeah, the attention seeking isn't just for children.
No.
It's for adults as well, but on a much deeper level than children. And you're right. It's you make me is one of the five words or 5 danger phrases that
Yes.
we should never use. But no, that's a really, I love words. I'm working so hard on my language and trying to remove these danger phrases or these danger words, and to keep things very simple as well. I think language development isn't about becoming more complicated with language. It's about becoming easier
Yes.
and simpler.
One of the language patterns that I work on, and it comes from the subconscious, is how can I take what I just said, if it was in a negative context, and phrase it positively? Like,
Mhm.
and a lot of times, when working with clients and stuff, they'll say, well, I wasn't wanted and I wasn't needed. And well, how would you phrase that positively? Because if you can take that and turn it around to a positive, then that can start opening up some of those prosperity doors as well, to magnify all the good things in your life, because you're sending out positive signals instead of negative signals by rephrasing what you said.
Yeah, and it's quite simple to rephrase. So yeah, when people leave work environments, say, well, I left because I didn't fit in. And
Right.
you can rephrase that and say, they didn't fit, that company didn't fit with me.
Exactly.
So that's reframing is fantastic. Is there any, that's not very good English. Are there any words of wisdom talking I'm gonna blame where I live. Are there any kind of words of wisdom, some parting inspiration, something that you want to leave our viewers with?
Yes. When I was going through a lot of hardships in my life many years ago, I couldn't digest food for 2 years. My marriage ended out of their unfaithfulness, and then I was left financially devastated. And it's what transitioned me from the financial world into the healing world, into sharing some of these universal truths and principles that I talk and write about. And I had a phrase that I would say, it became a mantra of mine. And it was, trust and you will see, believe and you will know, have faith, all is well, follow your heart and spirit will lead you. And that mantra has become the faith, the trust, the belief of those keys that open up those prosperity doors. And when you follow truly what's in your heart space, everything is given unto you. So trust and you will see, believe and you will know, have faith, all is well. Follow your heart and spirit will lead you.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Dawna. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I think we could have gone down a lot more rabbit holes than we did.
We could talk for days.
Yeah, thank you so much.
But we could. It's perfect.
Yeah, there's just so much to unwrap with everything as well, and yeah, nothing is separated. I think that is the important lesson, and I think you've shown us that even when you bring money, which people don't necessarily always like to talk about, because they're seen, or they feel like they're being selfish, or they're talking about things they shouldn't be. But you in the last hour, you've shown us actually, money is something that is linked to everything else, and the way that we treat it and the way that we view it is the way that we should treat and view everything else in our lives. And I love the mind, body, spirit kind of aspect as well, because they are our three of the greatest pillars, and they all need to be fit and healthy.
Yes, they do. And it's in all aspects of our life. One thing flows into the next and the next and creates a full circle every time. So thank you. It's been a pleasure being here with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dawna. And as always, if anyone's catching up on this this show, either now live or YouTube later or even LinkedIn later, then and you've got any questions, then please send them over. I can pass them on to Dawna or put her in touch with you. And it's been an absolute pleasure again, Dawna. Thank you so much.
Thank
And we'll
you.
speak soon. Okay, bye.